be a problem, but you never know. You never know. Brenden Nunes joins us. Brenden, thank you so much for joining us, my guy. How you doing?
What's up, man? I am doing well. As my voice decides to go
I was
out
going to say, are you doing well?
I'm doing well. Yeah, that caught me off guard. I'm doing well. Can't complain. Thanks for having me, bro.
Let's start here, Brenden. The roster, right? We've talked about it time and time again with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine and the crew. I spent the 11 o'clock hour saying that I think that Scott Perry maybe doesn't believe that what he's hearing is overblown, but I feel like Scott Perry thinks that it's not going to be that hard. The guys that The Athletic, ESPN, that all these guys are just, just bagging on as far as the starters are concerned and how it doesn't make sense. I feel like Scott Perry just doesn't think it's going to be that hard to move off of them. And whether it is or not, it's only 2 more years of this. So it is what it is. His clock hasn't really started yet. He didn't make any of these moves or have any of these contracts. Now, I don't think his clock should start. We don't know that for certain, depending on how his boss feels about it. But I just think he's just not really tripping because you either get to move off of them during the trade, one of these trade deadlines this season or next season, or in 2 years, he's starting fresh.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not his mess that he made, essentially. So he's walking into this, and like you said, the top of the roster, I think, is going to be reworked eventually. Mm-hmm. And primarily, you're looking at DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. I think that Domas falls into that, but probably a tier below. Mm-hmm. I think that eventually DeMar and Domas will be off this team, like the 2-year timeline, right? And that there's no rush. The patient but prudent is the wording that you hear Scott Perry using all the time.
Once or twice,
Yeah. He's got a couple things that he might repeat and hammer a point home. But I think that in the meantime, there's that identity aspect, and DeMar very much so falls into that. I would say the personality that Scott Perry is looking for. You never hear a bad thing about DeMar DeRozan. I think that's where the Russell Westbrook stuff comes from too, because honestly, I don't see the basketball fit in the greatest way. So to me, DeMar does provide you something temporarily in that aspect. Zach LaVine can score the crap out of the ball. I feel like people. He's at the point where he's probably underrated a little bit as a player, just what he brings on the floor, but also overvalued contractually, obviously, which factors into those conversations. So I agree with you. I think that it's essentially we got 2 years here where Scott Perry can continue to have these guys on the trade block, test their market, see what's out there, and wait until there's something that, hey, I think that there's a piece in this deal that makes sense for us to get back that's more beneficial for remaining competitive in the long term, because it's not like they're waiting to trade these guys for, failed draft picks that are second draft guys necessarily, even worse than like the Sohan that you're talking about, for example, right? I don't think it's to that extent. I think they will still try to remain competitive in the short term when they move these guys. And maybe that just means we're not taking on a big salary and we're okay with just getting to the point where they fully walk, to be honest. So very much so think that right now, it's waiting to rework the top of the roster. And in the meantime, try to fill out some of these complementary pieces that could be around more long-term. Like Jonathan Kuminga doesn't make that much sense for the team right now, in my mind. That Jeremy Sohan doesn't make that much sense for the team right now. But the team's not going to be very good right now, to be honest. And I think that you should be thinking a little bit further ahead with the thought that DeMar, Zach will continue to be on the market, and 2 years max, they will probably be on another team.
Yeah, I'm still, and I'm sure you heard my fights with the Russell Westbrook fan base, the Russell Westbrook hive.
A little bit.
They were on me. They were on me all night.
I didn't know they were still.
I had to mute it. They're out here.
Yeah.
Don't play.
Yeah.
Do not play with the Brodies. That's what I'll just call them, the Brodies. Do not play with them. But I really, after talking with them, and obviously they think Russell Westbrook is the best player ever, but it really kind of confirmed with me how little sense this does make. Because I continue to say, if the Warriors said yes, let's say the Kings said unprotected first pick or first round draft pick, Devin Carter and Dario. Okay, cool. How much time was Devin Carter? Is Devin Carter going to get on this team, right? 10 minutes, whatever it is. That doesn't help Russell Westbrook to me. So
I think it's more about the Malik.
It's Malik.
Trade.
It's Malik. So if you don't move Malik, I really don't see. You can move Devin Carter tomorrow. I don't see how this Russell Westbrook thing makes sense. it's almost, and obviously the reports kept coming out. That's fine. And even Matt George said either one, right? He had said looking like Malik Monk or Devin Carter. I just don't see how it could be Devin Carter, and that makes Russell Westbrook feel any better. I don't see it unless you're just talking about straight up beating somebody out and Malik not playing, or Malik or Keon not playing. And we talked about this to kick off the show. Jeremy Lin might be better than Tejan Salon or somebody right now, but you get to a point where you're trying to develop talent. I'm not personally trying to play Russell Westbrook over Devin Carter or Keon Ellis or even Malik. I'm not trying to do that. That doesn't help anything.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I also, credit to you. First segment, we already got Tejan Salon shout out in here. It was good work by you.
Oh, he said it about 3 segments.
Look, fair enough.
He's still figuring it out.
He's your guy.
Yeah.
It's early. Early.
I talked about it with him, Brennan, but how funny is it that the guy he was all in on going into a draft, like a draft he actually cared about, ends up being like the biggest draft bust of the last 5 years.
It's early. The biggest draft bust of the last 5 years is crazy. It's not that bad. I will say. There are some bad ones.
The fact that he's the 6th pick and just cannot get on the court is insane.
Johnny Davis.
No, who's our guy? He's the guard.
There's a lot of guards.
He was he on the Pistons?
Are we? Lefty Fred, Killian Hayes.
Yeah,
that was 5 years ago.
There's some bad ones. There's some bad ones.
Hayes, but what were you saying?
Yeah, I mean, on the Russ thing, I honestly, I keep coming back to the culture and identity thing that Scott Perry wants, but that's mainly because I don't really see the basketball fit.
Yeah.
And to the Devin Carter point, you do want to develop your youth a little bit more. I don't get the sense that they're the most optimistic about Devin Carter. And so maybe that's why you go to Russ over him in that scenario. Russ helps you get your pace back. It feels like Dennis Schroeder falls into that same thing. Maybe they are trying to get a high-paced offense back a little bit with this group.
But again, you're playing him over Malik Monk?
No, not. I mean, I think that Malik gets a few less minutes because Russ is on the team, because Malik is then more functioning as a 2. He's not your backup 1,
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, I don't have names off the top of my head, but they need forward depth more than point guard depth at this point.
Chris Boucher was right there.
I don't love a Chris Boucher, but they need something.
He needs something.
But the other side of it that I will acknowledge, sure. I love some coffee.
This is where we're at.
This is where we are at.
Trey Lyles, baby.
There you go. Still out there. But the thing I will point out is that all the talk this offseason is, hey, we need a point guard. And they got one in Dennis Schroeder. And I just think you have to keep in mind, if something happens to Dennis Schroeder, we're right back to, hey, we have no point guards on this team. And so that's where I'm I see needing another guy. To be honest, from my perspective, again, I think they're going to be very mediocre this year. That no, you can just, for a little while. How many games last year did we see that essentially Malik Monk was the point guard of this team? DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, these guys can all handle the ball. Yeah, it's not going to look pretty, but I don't know that it's going to be much worse than what it would be with Russell Westbrook running the show. So I don't know. To me, a lot of it feels like it's trying to be that culture and the identity of the team, the hard-nosed, almost Detroit-style basketball that's very Scott Perry, that you're not going to push us around, and having that sort of energy on the team and leadership more than the basketball production, which, hey, again, if you're going to be a mediocre team next year, I guess you should make sure you have a good locker room in the process, if you can.
Yeah,
even though Russ is a weird one. Russ is a weird one, too, though, locker room-wise. I talked to Denver people last year, and they're like, he was pretty upset about not starting. And it's well, you're not going to start on this team, but I'm sure that must have been communicated. That's what
I was fighting with the Brodies about, or the Brookies, whatever we want to call them. That's what I was fighting with them about, because I didn't love when it came out. I thought, because I don't have a problem I like Russ. It's just, I'm looking at it from the Kings perspective and the roster construction. That's all. But you had the thing come out from Ramona Shelburne they were still in the playoffs about that locker room stuff, and Aaron Gordon had to speak on it. It's just weird. It's just weird stuff that seems to happen that I just don't think the juice is not worth the squeeze to me at all. at all.
Yeah. He's definitely a like high risk, high reward player, I guess, at this point in his career. And that varies on a game to game, sometimes quarter to quarter basis.
Right.
You know, if you like watching the postseason last year, there's a game or two where you're like, wow, Russ is playing great in this one. And then those same games, he can just do some blunder at the end of the game that you're like, what in the world just happened?
Right.
But that's the experience that you're signing up for and living with in this point. And to be fair, you're probably saying the same thing about Malik Monk, about Devin Carter to an even greater extent.
Yeah, but they're learning.
They are. Yes, there's
Maybe
like
not,
the upside sell there.
And both of them really, because Malik even as a point guard, that he's still learning.
Malik could definitely still get better as a player.
Right. You're not making bad decisions for no reason. Right. Russ, these are assumed future bad decisions for no reason.
Yeah. I think it's more about having like the point guard that the idea of a point guard and why Perry, I think, wanted a point guard so bad, which obviously there was just very much a need. But I think it's more so a facilitator, a guy to come down the floor and be like, hey, Zach hasn't touched the ball in 4 possessions. I'm going to make sure to go to this side, you know? And I think that's more Russ than it is Malik and Devin. And that's what Dennis Schroeder falls under a little bit, even though these guys also have their moments of big ball stoppers. Don't get me wrong. Right. But I think that they fit more into like the traditional point guard. I'm going to make sure everybody is staying involved. Keep the energy up on both ends of the floor. Perry's big on like, hey, you're setting the tone defensively as well, which, hey, Russ isn't a great defender, but he's going to go out there and try. You're not going to question his effort in the slightest when he's out there. So I think you're catering to that a little, but I think I'm more with you than the Brodies here, that it's a pretty questionable fit.
I think what I'm saying, and I'm not going to beat around the bush because it is what it is. You know, we're all allowed to have our opinions. And yeah, I just think that the idea of Dennis Schroeder and Russell Westbrook together just makes no sense.
I think that's very fair.
I just think it doesn't make sense. If you wanted Russell Westbrook, how much they were committed to Dennis Schroeder, they should have known that Dennis Schroeder and Russell Westbrook together on a team just doesn't make a ton of sense. If you wanted Russell Westbrook, you go get a Trey Jones, right? And you do Trey Jones and Russell Westbrook, or even his older brother. You do a Tyus Jones and Russell Westbrook. You do something like that. You don't commit to coming off of Russell Westbrook playing 27 minutes a game for a team that actually went to the playoffs.
He played 27 a game last year.
Yes, brother.
That's crazy.
He did.
Yeah.
Well, he was also starting earlier, and then they decided, hey, we're better with Christian Brown at the starting 2, and they were exactly right.
So you can't look at that, sign Dennis Schroeder. You can do it if you don't already have 17 guards on the roster, but you already have 17 guards on the roster.
Yeah, but no point guards from their perspective, and I guess that you're just trying to add some depth there and guys that, again, the biggest thing that Scott Perry says that he wants for this upcoming season is establishing an identity. And if you feel like Russ fits that more than Malik Monk, then from his perspective, the point guard is really the one that is setting the tone and setting that identity possession after possession. Mm-hmm. And if you feel like Russ fits that, then in my mind, that's what feels like the logic here.
Here's a thought, and I'm thinking about this. I'll probably even rebake this tomorrow, but here's a thought. You really want Russ, right? Or that's what it seems like. You really want Russ, and Malik Monk seems to be the odd man out. Do you think it's possible? And I know Carmichael Dave reported earlier this week, the Kings are very open, right? Or they are completely fine with going into the season with Malik Monk on the roster. There's no bad blood. It's just, it is what it is. And everybody kind of understands we have too many of the same position, very similar to the Blazers. Could there be a world as they move away from Jonathan Kuminga, and Malik Monk has been dangled in trade talks from the point the confetti fell on OKC's floor? He was dangled in trade talks. Could there be a world where he just gets moved for somebody else because Scott Perry just comes to a point where I want Westbrook. 2, I can't go into the season with not necessarily Malik, but I can't go into the season with this many combo guards. Could you see a world where, I don't know, at the buzzer, it's Malik for PJ Washington? You add in a 3-4 and PJ Washington, Malik is gone now, and now you add, after PJ Washington, you add in Russell Westbrook because Malik's 25, 27, 30 minutes is gone. Do you think that could be something that pops up before we get to training camp and the preseason, or do you think they just handle or not handle it once the season starts?
So like Russ signs with a contingency and like it known, hey, we're going to trade Malik at some point.
Yeah, we're done. It's not the Kuminga thing. Fine.
Right.
Warriors, do what you want to do. And I don't know if that also connects to how much the Kings want Kuminga, because if he does sign that deal, then they don't want to trade Malik because they'd want to keep that contract for December or January when he's available. So it all weirdly comes back to Jonathan Kuminga, but let's just remove Jonathan Kuminga for a second. The Kings, fine. We had some fun with that. We've moved on. Do you see a world where they say, you know what, let's go get PJ Washington. Let's go enter a $15 to $18 million player for Malik Monk, and so we can bring in Russell Westbrook?
I think that there is like an effort to do that currently, but again, it's a patience somewhat that, Scott Perry isn't just going to trade Malik just for the sake of bringing in Russell Westbrook. Like, you're still going to make sure you are getting value for Malik Monk, because like, what are we really talking about? Malik Monk is clearly a much better player and much younger than Russell Westbrook, but I would also say that his archetype seems to be lowering in value. Like there wasn't a better offer out there when he re-signed with the Kings. There clearly had been like shopping him this offseason, and I don't think there were great offers on the table, or they probably would have jumped on something. You see Jordan Clarkson go pretty much unsigned and then make his way to New York. Cam Thomas can't really come up with a deal, even if he may be overvaluing himself. Like, I think that archetype of player is lowering in value currently, and kind of seems to be like at a borderline all-time low.
Yeah.
And it feels like that has to climb back up, or just take the right circumstances. And what I'm getting at is that, like, I think at some point at the trade deadline, a team could be like, hey, we really need one more ball handler. Funnily enough, I kind of think it could be the Warriors.
Yeah.
They're relying on Podziemski a lot after Steph and Jimmy Butler. But there could be a lot of teams. It could be Miami. You could look in a lot of different directions where a team just identifies, hey, we need this one more guy, and Malik happens to fit that. But I don't think that has anything to do with Russell Westbrook, to be honest. It feels like the Russell Westbrook stuff has more to do with him wanting to make sure there's already a role before he commits to somewhere, because clearly there's interest from the Kings side. I'd imagine if they could do a situation where, hey, look, we're trying to do this, we just don't have anything lined up yet, that Russ would probably already be agreed to being a member of the Sacramento Kings. So that feels like it's more so from his side, but the Kings don't need to rush. And like, you don't need Russell Westbrook on this team.
Right.
I think that they like him, but I don't think that they are doing anything desperately and thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to make our team so much better next year. Like, it's unfortunate. Next year is sort of, you're killing time a little bit. Like we talked about at the beginning, with you're waiting to rework the top of this roster, and you're trying to get nice pieces on the back end in the meantime. And like, Russ is not one of that, so you're not just going to move Malik Monk just for the sake of moving him to bring in Russell Westbrook. I think it's about waiting for a deal where it makes sense. He's also your matching salary, like you're pointing out, that, hey, if that's what's holding you back from signing Russell Westbrook, my guess, and this is more reading tea leaves rather than actually reporting anything, is that you'd rather just hold on to Malik Monk and keep that flexibility rather than, hey, trade him for nothing. Like, if a PJ Washington's on the table, like you're talking about, I think that's a good deal. But if it's hey, we got to really dump him for essentially nothing to bring in Russ, I don't think that's the way they would go about it.
So you feel as if, and it's been, look, he's been part of the Pistons conversation, and obviously he was a part of the Warriors conversation. They have gone around, because a lot of people will say, what's this Malik Monk stuff? Why has he got this negative It's not negative PR. It's just, this is the two deals that the Kings have done or been heavily connected to. Malik Monk has been in those conversations. So I think we can assume that they have reached out to other teams and they have not liked what they've heard back for a Malik Monk return. Right? If it was a PJ Washington, they're probably in on it. Maybe the Mavs are thinking, no, we want to see what Cooper Flagg does first.
We got Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah. We got some guys. We're solid here. So maybe that's where they're going. talking to the Brodies or going back and forth with the Brodies, they think that Russ has cut off conversations with Eastern Conference teams because he wants to stay in California, like the Chris Paul, all these older guys with their families. I don't know that I buy that. I don't know. And they did not have actual reports on it. I don't know that Russ, I guess what I'm saying is Brodies or no Brodies, I don't know that Russ has a ton of other options because I don't know that if he did, he'd be waiting around for a second. Right. I don't think the Kings are super pressed to acquire Russell Westbrook. At least they shouldn't be. And on the flip side, I think if Russell Westbrook had other options, even if it was on the East Coast, I can't see him saying no.
Who's the other team he's been linked to most? Is
he was
Detroit?
He was linked to the Bucks, and then the Bucks got Cole Anthony. He was lightly linked to the Knicks, and they got Jordan Clarkson.
That's right.
So, and I just don't find a world where Russ turned down the Bucks and the Knicks. I don't see that.
Yeah, again, it feels like he's probably very focused on, okay, what's my role going to be on these teams? Right. And I think if he was satisfied with the role a team was offering, then he would have picked up somewhere, which includes the Kings. And that's why it feels very much like what's been reported, that he's waiting for a role to open up via trade. And maybe that means Devin Carter, maybe that means Malik Monk, or he, maybe that is his preference if that deal were to happen. And then he has another deal essentially waiting to, hey, if that doesn't, then I'm just going to go down this path, you know, because to be waiting this long, like, it clearly the Kings have interest, and maybe there's a world where which it feels like what you're getting at, that there's just nothing else out there, and he still just does join the Kings, even though they still have these guys on the roster. But again, it feels like if you didn't have other options, that maybe you would just play it patient and wait and see how this goes. But in my mind, if you had other options, you probably would have jumped on that by now, or else you're going to run into another scenario where whatever team you're keeping in your back pocket goes and gets their version of Cole Anthony, and then ends up eating the minutes that you saw as potential. So I think there is a world where Russ just sees no better option and the Kings could get a deal done. It's not like there's a crazy market out there for Russell Westbrook. They could still get a deal done and keep these guys out there. But in my mind, it makes sense for Russ to also have another option in his back pocket if this is his preference, contingent on a trade being done.
As far as how I feel about it, not playing Russ over some of the young guys, that's one thing. But Doug Christie's job is to win games. And if I'm Russell Westbrook, if Devin Carter gets moved, if I'm Russell Westbrook, and we know how Russell Westbrook is, he does not give a you-know-what about Malik Monk, Keon Ellis, or anybody. He's going to believe, and that's kind of how Doug Christie appears to get down. So if they bring him into the fold, I think they're not going to be beholden to Russ is on a minimum deal and Malik's making $18 million. I think it's going to be, and this will be fun for fans, I think it'll be a dogfight as to who's going to get that playing time. That's all fine and good for this season. If that's the case, I'm fine with him taking Malik minutes, because at this point, clearly Malik is not in their long-term plans. I would be against, if you want to move off of Devin Carter for Westbrook, fine. Whether I agree with it or disagree with it, fine. But I would be more so against Nick Clifford having to spend time in Stockton, or Keon Ellis not get, kind of battling it out for time.
Right.
That's the type of stuff where I just don't think makes a lot of sense. But if they want to kind of pocket Malik Monk and Russell Westbrook and have them battle it out, since they're probably going to move on from Malik at some point anyway, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and I think that's where you kind of just have to trust your coaching staff, right? I don't think that they're in a position where they're going to be playing the younger guy that's worse than another option. You know what I mean? I think that to your point, Doug Christie's job is to try to win games. He's going to try to do as much as possible. And you'd like to think that, hey, if Russ is on that team and he's just a better option in a scenario than Malik Monk, it's just that black and white, that they're going to go in that direction, that if Russ is a worse option, that he's not going to be playing. But it's not always that simple, obviously, as you know, and all the listeners will know, there's a bunch of politics involved in all this. Russ has played for a very long time, obviously cares about the role that he is going to be playing on whatever team. I think that's why there's this holdout that's obviously going on. So, I mean, I think that, again, you just have to trust your coach's evaluation there. And that also, Russ is a good mentor to some of these young guys, like a Nick Clifford. Even if he plays less minutes because Russ is on the team, it might be more beneficial for him long-term to learn from Russell Westbrook, even if that means he plays 200 less minutes this year, but he got the mentorship of Russ. Domas will tell you how great Russ was. Domas was Russ's rookie when he came into OKC, and De'Aaron would talk up Russ all the time. Like a lot of players in the league look up to Russell Westbrook, and I think that work ethic is like, he's borderline like mama mentality type guy, and DeMar DeRozan is that as well. So I think there is the off the court value that Russ brings to these rookies as well, even if he's hindering their playing time a little bit in year one.
Brenden Nunes, thank you so much for joining us. Great stuff, man, as always.
No problem, sir. Thanks for having me.
When we return, a deal almost happened with the Miami Heat. There is another name in Miami that the Kings should, would, or could be targeting. Allen Stiles, Sactown Sports.